Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house, the familiar sound of tires running over gravel giving me a moment of solace. It's been a long day, and I've shown my clients several properties, and at the moment I just want to find a place to calm down. The setting sun's rays cast long shadows on the manicured lawn as I sat in my car, trying to clear my mind of the recent turmoil. My relationship with Ashley has been a little strained lately. Like two ships crossing paths in the night, we drifted apart without being able to say exactly why. This sense of detachment, if any, makes me fidgety, which is one of the reasons why I suddenly decided to visit my parents today. Maybe revisiting the simple good old days will help me get some sense of direction. As I stepped out of the car, there was a fragrance coming from the rose bushes my mother had planted. I took a deep breath and felt the pressure on my shoulders seem to ease a bit. This house has always been my safe haven where I know I will always be loved unconditionally. I stepped onto the front porch steps, each one making that familiar creaking sound I remembered, a sound that hadn't changed since I was a kid. Just as I was about to knock on the door, there was talking coming from the half-open window. My hand hung in midair as I could hear that it was my mother's voice, and she wasn't alone. "When are you going to tell my son that the twins aren't his children?" The words hit me like a punch in the chest, and I staggered back, nearly falling down the steps. I must have misheard you. It can't be. But immediately afterward, another voice I knew all too well replied, "After they finish college and get married." It was Ashley's voice, her tone light as if she were talking about the weather. Their real father couldn't afford child support anyway, and William never suspected anything. The world tilted beneath me, and I had to grip the porch railing so tightly to stay on my feet that my knuckles turned white from the effort. My mind ran wild trying to digest the shocking information. That Marcus and Kevin, my twin boys, my pride, the lineage I thought was continuing, it was all a lie. How I wanted to rush in, question them, release the millions of emotions that were churning in my chest at the moment. But what's left of the sanity in my brain stops me. It can't be now. It can't be this. I need time and more information. I tiptoed back to the car, a careful maneuver that was foreign to me. I slid into the driver's seat, my shaking hands barely able to grip the steering wheel. When I saw myself in the rearview mirror, I barely recognized the staring, pale man. In that moment, I realized that my life would never be the same again. On the drive home, my brain kept repeating that overheard conversation. 19 years of marriage, and it was all a lie. Ashley, how could you do this to me? And my own mother, how could she be complicit in this scam? I pulled into the driveway. No, my driveway. This house, this life we'd built together, suddenly all seemed like props in some cruel play, and I seemed to be the only actor who didn't know the script. Taking a deep breath, I tried to keep my expression calm. It's too soon for Ashley to know that I've discovered the truth. I need time to think. I need to make a plan. As I walked through the front door, Ashley called out from the kitchen, "William, is that you back?" "It's me," I replied, proud of the stability of my voice. She appeared in the doorway, wiping a plate in her hand and a warm smile on her face. A smile I'd been watching for nearly 20 years. At this moment, I can't help but think how many lies are hidden behind that smile. "You're home early today," she said, coming over and trying to kiss me. It took all my willpower not to duck. "How was work today?" I forced myself to respond to her kisses and continued to play my part in this farce. "Oh, the usual. Showing clients a couple houses and dealing with some picky buyers." I shrugged and acted as if nothing had happened, nothing special. If only she knew the truth. "Well, dinner will be ready in about another hour," Ashley said, turning back to the kitchen. "The boys should be back soon after practice." The boys. My boys. No, not my boys. The thought brought a new wave of sharp pain. "Sounds good," I said to her back. "I'm going to take a shower first." As soon as I entered the bathroom, I removed all pretense. I braced my hands on the sink and stared at myself in the mirror. The man who looked back at me looked much older, betrayal written all over his face. As the hot water hit my shoulders, I began trying to piece together a plan. I can't confrontation right away. No, not yet. I need more information. I need proof. And I had to protect myself, as well as the two boys, no matter what the coming storm would bring. Over the next few weeks, I watched Ashley's every move like a falcon, noting every lie, every inconsistency. All those outings that I had once considered inconsequential, all those secret phone calls that I had always thought innocent and harmless, suddenly took on a new meaning. Particularly the iffy intimacy between her and our family friend Michael, whose eagerness and friendliness, now that I think about it, to be ready to help was just a cover for his affair with my wife. I found a private investigator, John Marcus. In his office downtown, I told him I needed absolute confidentiality. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. I can't help but think that I wonder how many other men like me he's helped before me, how many lives he's witnessed fall apart in front of him. While waiting for Marcus to investigate, I began to prepare for an as-yet undetermined program. Maybe it's escape, maybe it's confrontation. All I know is that I need to leave something for myself. I began to quietly sell my assets, move my money around, and look at ways to disappear completely and start over somewhere else. I consulted a lot of information on how to leave my current life without leaving a trace. During the day, I continue my routine, going to work, coming home, and playing the role of loving husband and father. But every move felt like torture to me. Every laugh, every touch, every intimate moment with Ashley sent a wave of nausea through me. I looked at Marcus and Kevin's faces, desperately searching for a resemblance between them and me, but now I understood why I could never find it. My sons were oblivious to the impending change and were still immersed in the world that belongs to teenagers. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of waiting, Marcus called and asked me to come to his office. I made up an excuse to see a client to get past Ashley and drove downtown, my heart beating so fast it almost jumped out of my chest. Marcus's office is small and filled with papers and outdated equipment. He gestured for me to sit down, his face grave. "Mr. Williams," he said, "I have obtained the information you requested." He pushed a folder across the table. I opened the folder with a trembling hand, and the evidence in front of me was clear and unforgiving. Photos of Ashley and Michael together, hotel reservation records, late-night intimate dinners, and records of money exchanges. The evidence overwhelmingly confirmed my deepest fears. "How long has it been?" I asked, my voice so low I could barely hear it. Marcus cleared his throat. "Based on financial records and witness statements, the affair appears to have been going on for about 18 years. 18 years. My entire married life, all my time with Ashley, has been an elaborate lie. So, what about the boys?" I forced myself to ask the question, even though I already knew the answer. Marcus' eyes were sympathetic. "It would take a DNA test to be completely sure, but based on the timeline, it's highly likely that Michael Greaves is their biological father." I nodded. I've known this for a while, but hearing it confirmed still made the fact incredibly real. "What would you like to do, Mr. William?" Marcus asked gently. What do I want to do? I wanted to scream. I wanted to freak out. I wanted to run up to Ashley and ask her why she did this to me, why she made me live a lie for so many years. But as the initial wave of anger receded, it was replaced by a cold, thoughtful fury, a desire not just for answers, but for justice. "I'm going to disappear," I heard myself say. "I'm going to leave no trace. And I'm going to make them pay for what they've done." Marcus nodded, seemingly unsurprised by the answer. "I can help you, but are you sure? Once you start down this path?" "I'm sure," I interrupted. "They took everything from me. My marriage, my children, my trust. Now I'm going to take everything from them." I left Marcus' office feeling surprisingly calm. For the first time in weeks, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Ashley, Michael, even my own mother, they thought they could fool me forever. They underestimated me. Now they will pay dearly for every mistake they made. On the way home, I began to refine my plan in my head. I'm going to make their world fall apart when they least expect it. I'm going to give them a taste of betrayal and the pain of having that trust shattered. But most importantly, I want to make sure that Marcus and Kevin are protected in this storm, regardless of their bloodline. In my heart, they will always be my sons. At night, my car sped down the highway, headlights illuminating the road ahead. And inside me, an even darker plan was taking shape. The flames of vengeance begin to burn, but this time, I'll make sure it burns slowly and thoroughly enough. In the pre-dawn darkness, I quietly watched a sleeping Ashley. A part of my heart still loved her despite all that had happened, but that feeling had long since been drowned out by the pain of betrayal. I left a note on the kitchen counter, vaguely worded, saying only that I needed some time and space to clear my head. By the time she reads it, I'll be far gone. I picked up my prepared duffel bag and took one last look around the home. It holds so many memories, good and bad, now colored by deception. As I stepped into the early morning darkness, a variety of emotions swept over me. Fear, excitement, sadness, anger, they were all intertwined. But underneath all of that was a strong sense of purpose. I drove to the promised parking lot where John Marcus was already waiting for me. He held a folder in his hand, his face serious. "Mr. Williams," he said, "everything is ready. Your new identity is Andrew Thompson, born in Ohio, with no criminal record. We've created a backstory that will stand up to investigation." I nodded and took the folder, looking through the papers inside. "What about other arrangements?" "It's all taken care of," Marcus assured me, "and the cabin in Montana is yours. It's remote, just as you requested. I've also set up systems that will allow you to monitor your family's activities remotely." "They're not my family anymore." I say the words with a bitter taste flooding my mouth. Marcus gave me a sympathetic look. "Sure, sorry." "So, Mr. Thompson, are you sure you want to do this? Once it's gone, there's no turning back." I took a deep breath and made up my mind. I'm sure. They took everything from me, and now I'm going to watch them lose everything too. With a final handshake and goodbye to Marcus, I also said goodbye to William. From this moment on, I am Andrew Thompson. The drive to Montana was long and lonely and gave me so much time to think. I kept going back to my conversation with Ashley, searching for clues I might have missed. I think of Marcus and Kevin and wonder if I'll ever see them again. The pain of losing them almost takes my breath away, but I remind myself that they were never really mine. When I finally reached the cabin, I was both exhausted and exhilarated. The place was indeed as run down as Marcus had said, but I could see the potential. This will be my new beginning. Over the next few months, I threw myself into renovating the lodge while building a new identity. I grew a beard and let my hair grow longer. When I look in the mirror now, I hardly recognize myself. It's fitting, after all. William is dead, leaving only Andrew Thompson. I started running a classic car restoration business, something I've always loved but never had the time to pursue. Restoring these old machines makes me feel healed, as if by bringing these broken things back to life, I too can find some kind of redemption. Meanwhile, I continued to follow the situation in New Jersey through the surveillance system. Marcus sends regular updates and I have access to surveillance footage and financial records. I watched Ashley's world spiral into chaos, and it gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction. 6 months later, Marcus sent a particularly interesting report. He managed to get a bug installed in Ashley's new apartment, which is nowhere near as big as our old house. I overheard a conversation between her and Michael. "I don't understand." Ashley's voice came through the speakers. "How could he just leave? It doesn't make sense." "Maybe he's onto something," Michael cautioned cautiously. After a short silence, Ashley responded, "No way. We're too careful for him to know." I couldn't help but sneer at her confidence. "She's always underestimated me." "For whatever reason," Michael continued, "we have bigger problems now. The banks are coming back to collect on the mortgage." I know," said Ashley irritably, "that without William's income one dash." "What about you?" Ashley asked suddenly. "Can you help more?" Michael let out a bitter laugh. "Ashley, I'm an accountant, not a real estate mogul. I can't support you, and the kid's on my salary. Besides, we never agreed to do this. I thought we had a deal." "A pact?" Ashley's voice rose. "Is that what you think of all this? A pact?" I turned off the listening device and couldn't continue listening. Part of me felt a twisted pleasure at their plight, but more than that it was an emptiness. As month after month turned into year after year, I remotely observed Ashley's life continue to fall apart. The house is repossessed by the bank, and Marcus and Kevin, now in college, become increasingly estranged from their mother. I could see the stress and confusion on their faces in the surveillance photos Marcus sent. Sometimes I wonder if this revenge is even worth it. But every time that thought comes up, I think of the afternoon that changed everything, of the conversation I heard on the porch of my parents' house, of 19 years of lies. It will reignite the anger in me and remind me why I do what I do. In the mountains of Montana, I slowly built my life. My car repair business is booming and more customers are coming from all over. But every silent night, as I sit alone on the porch of my cabin and look out at the mountains in the distance, I think of the family I once thought belonged to me, and of the two boys who, though not related by blood, will always be my sons in my heart. One crisp fall morning, I was busy working on a '67 Mustang sedan when my phone suddenly vibrated. This is a notification from the reminder system I set up to monitor Ashley's life. I rarely check these updates anymore these days. The desire for vengeance has been replaced by a weary compassion. But this time, some kind of intuition told me I should take a look. I wiped the motor oil from my hands and pulled out my cell phone. What came to mind was a news article about a college football game. The photo shows Marcus and Kevin in their jerseys with winning smiles on their faces. The headline reads, "Thompson Twins lead state to championship game victory." I stared at the photo, greedily taking in every detail. They've grown up and have gone from the teenagers I remember to real men. Pride surged through his chest, followed by a sharp pang of loss. I may not be their biological father, but I raised them, loved them, and still do. For a moment, I contemplated contacting them. But what can I say? How to explain my disappearance without exposing their mother's betrayal? No, it's better to let them move on, to keep their lives from being overshadowed by the past. Just as I was lost in thought, there was a knock on the garage door. "Boss." Lisa, my assistant, shouted. "A customer came in asking about that Chevy." "Be right there," I responded, shoving my cell phone back into my pocket. I remind myself that Andrew Thompson doesn't have twin sons who play college football. He only has a thriving body store and a community that respects him. That has to be enough. The next few weeks flew by in a flurry of work. I threw myself into a challenging restoration project and appreciated the opportunity for a distraction. But the shadows of Marcus and Kevin have always haunted the edges of my thoughts. One night, as I was about to lock the garage, my cell phone rang again. This time it was an email notification. The sender's name made my heart skip a beat. Ashley Thompson. I sat down in my office and stared at that unread email for a long time. In the end, curiosity overcame hesitation. "Dear William, I don't know if you're still alive or if you'll ever read this email, but I need to say these words, even if they end up just disappearing into the void. I'm so sorry. I know those few words are far from enough to make up for the damage I've caused, but they're all I have left. I've lost everything. Our home, our life together, even the relationship with my children. They barely talk to me now. I don't expect forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I finally understand now. The weight of the lie I was living, it was crushing me. If you're still out there somewhere, if you're reading these words, I hope you found peace. I hope you're living a happy life. Ashley." I read this email 3 times, my emotions in turmoil. Part of me wants to delete it and keep the distance I've worked so hard to build. But another part, a part one thought I had buried long ago, lurked at the pain in her words. I had clicked reply before deep thought. "I'm alive. I'm fine. That's all you need to know." I hit send, realizing I may have given her more of a response than she deserved. But somehow I feel like I need that closure too. Weeks passed and life moved on. I never heard from Ashley again, and that's for the best. But something did change. Those bitternesses that once haunted me began to dissipate and were replaced by a cautious hope. One Saturday morning, I was having breakfast at the local diner when I overheard a conversation at a neighboring table. "Did you see the game last night?" A man asked his friend. "Those Thompson brothers are unbelievable, definitely pro-ready." My coffee cup stopped in midair. His friend nodded eagerly. "Yeah, they're fantastic. It's a shame about their father, though. He disappeared a few years ago. Can you imagine missing out on watching your kids become stars?" I put down my coffee cup, my appetite gone. They wouldn't know how deeply this man, sitting just a few feet away, understood that regret. As I left the restaurant, my thoughts churned. Over the years, I've convinced myself that keeping my distance is the right thing to do. But hearing strangers talk about the father who abandoned his child shook my faith. Back at the cabin, I felt fidgety for the first time. For years I ran away, filling the emptiness inside with anger and revenge. But now, none of that seems to be enough. I opened my laptop and started searching. Soon found more photos of the boys, who are now the toast of the college football world. As I scrolled through the photos, one particular image stopped me in my tracks. That's a picture of the post-game press conference with Marcus and Kevin standing in front of the microphone. But in the background, almost imperceptible but clearly recognizable, is Ashley. She looked old and bent by the burdens of life, but she was there, supporting her sons. Something broke inside me. Over the years, I've held on to my anger and hurt for dear life, but looking at this photo, I realized that life has moved on without me. Marcus and Kevin have grown into adults, and Ashley, despite all her mistakes, is always there for them. And what did I do? Hiding in the mountains of Montana, licking my wounds, plotting my revenge. It was at that moment that I felt the first real and complete relief I had felt in years. Not forgiveness, not exactly, but acceptance. The past can't be changed, but the future is still in my hands. The next morning, I gathered the staff of the repair store. "I have something to announce," I said, my heart racing. "I need to take some time off to take care of some personal business." Lisa, my right-hand man, looked at me with concern. "Nothing wrong, boss? You're not sick, are you?" I shook my head and squeezed out a smile. "It's nothing like that, just some family issues that I've been putting off for too long." After organizing the work handover matters, I started to prepare for the upcoming trip. Fear and anticipation mingled in my mind, but I knew it was something I had to do. I can't keep being a ghost anymore. A week later, I was back in New Jersey. I stayed at a small hotel not far from Ashley's apartment. I trimmed the beard I had been growing for years into a neat goatee and cut my hair short. I look more like my old self in the mirror than I have in years, but I know full well that I am not the same William. The first day I just drove around and refamiliarized myself with the area. A lot has changed, but more stays the same. The déjà vu is both comforting and disturbing, like walking into a familiar dream. The next day, I worked up the courage to drive down to Ashley's apartment building. It's an ordinary building, a stark contrast to the big house we once had. Just as I was sitting in my rental car watching, I saw her come out to collect her mail. She was old, sure, but there was a dignity in her demeanor that surprised me. I was about to leave when another car pulled up in front of the apartment. Marcus stepped out of the car and my heart almost stopped beating. He said hello to his mother and then walked into the building together. Before I could think about it much, I was out of the car and headed toward the apartment building. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what to say, but I knew I couldn't run away from it anymore. I was only halfway there when the gate opened again. Marcus walks out, still laughing about something, and then he sees me. The smile disappeared from his face, replaced by shock, followed by anger. "Dad," he said, disbelief and anger in his voice. I stopped where I was, suddenly at a loss for words. "Marcus, I can explain." But before I could say more, Ashley appeared at the door. When she saw me, her hand flew to cover her mouth. "William, is it really you?" All three of us froze there, the weight of years of secrets and lies hanging over us. And then Marcus broke the silence. "Where the fuck have you been?" he questioned, pressing closer to me. "Do you realize what you did to us? To Mom, to Kevin, and to me?" I held up my hands in a placating gesture. "I know you're angry, and you have that right. But please let me explain." Ashley gently tugged on Marcus' arm. "We should go inside and talk," she whispered. "This isn't the place to talk." Marcus looks like he wants to retort, but finally nods briefly. I followed them into the apartment, my heart beating violently in my chest. The next few hours were some of the toughest I've ever experienced. I told them everything. The conversation I overheard that day at my parents' house, the hiring of a private investigator, my plan to disappear, even the fact that I had been spying on their lives remotely. Ashley listened quietly, tears streaming down her cheeks, while Marcus paced back and forth across the room, his emotions shifting between anger, sadness, and confusion. When I finished, The silence became deafening. Finally, Ashley opened up. "I'm sorry, William." Her voice was barely audible. "There's no excuse for what I did. But to disappear like that, do you realize what that does to the children?" I shook my head as years of built-up emotion finally erupted. I thought I was protecting them. I was so angry, so hurt. I wasn't thinking clearly. Marcus stopped pacing and turned to face me. "You could have told us," he said. "We're old enough to understand. But instead you just disappeared. Do you know how many nights Kevin and I spent lying in bed wondering if you died in a ditch somewhere? How many times we searched the internet hoping to find the slightest clue about you?" His words pierced my heart like daggers. I slumped in my chair, realizing how wrong I was. "You're right. I handled it horribly. All I was thinking about was hurting your mother, and I didn't think about how it would affect you and Kevin. I'm sorry. I know it probably wasn't enough, but I'm really sorry." We talked for hours, painfully sorting through years of hurt and misunderstanding. It wasn't easy. There were times when I thought Marcus was going to kick me out, and sometimes Ashley cried so much she couldn't go on. But slowly, we started to find a way to move forward. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the apartment, Marcus stood up. "I need to digest all this," he said, "and then I'm going to talk to Kevin. He deserves to hear this in person, not over the phone." I nodded in understanding and said, "Of course, I completely understand. He will want to see you." Marcus hesitated, and then added, "When he is ready, if you will." "Of course I do," I said, feeling my throat tighten. After Marcus left, Ashley and I still sat in the silence. There are too many unspoken words between us, too much irreparable damage. But maybe there is a silver lining. "What happens next?" Ashley asked softly. I shook my head. "I don't know. I can't be William Thompson anymore. That man doesn't exist anymore. But maybe we can find a way to move on. Everyone, including the kids." When I got back to the hotel that night, I got a text from Marcus. "Talk to Kevin. He wants to see you tomorrow at noon at the park where we used to play baseball, if you're still there." I smiled and replied, "I'll be there." Lying in bed, I thought back on the crazy day. Things aren't fully resolved and probably never will be. But now there is hope, there is possibility. Tomorrow, I will meet my sons as Andrew Thompson, the man I have become. Maybe, just maybe, we can build something new together. As I slowly fall asleep, I feel a peace I haven't felt in years. The days of disappearing are over, and it's time to reappear. Not as the old me, but as a new, more complete version of myself. The future is still full of uncertainty, but for now, at least, I'm ready to face it. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.